Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back once again to another episode of the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Jackson McCurry. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Anthony Jokey. Anthony, what's going on, man? It's been a couple weeks. How you doing?
Did we miss anything that happened? I don't know. I know we haven't been talking, but I don't think we missed anything, did we?
Uh, Not much. I don't think we missed hardly anything.
Because there's never any Browns news to talk about ever, right?
Right.
Ever.
And of course, we apologize to our listeners. Like last week, just scheduling conflicts, couldn't do pregame, couldn't do postgame. We apologize for that. But yeah, Anthony, of course, the week we don't do an episode, our star defensive player gets in a scary car accident, and the team once again has a fourth quarter meltdown and blows a game that they should have won. And now the Browns are sitting at 2-2, and they could theoretically be at least 3-1, potentially 4-0. But yeah, we didn't miss much.
Yeah, yeah. No, we haven't missed much at all, but they should be 4-0, and which would be incredible because of what's kind of taking shape in the division where Cincinnati and Baltimore are both 2-2, and then the Steelers are 1-3.
And
You could
starting a
really
rookie
be.
quarterback now.
Yeah, and you have that now. So the Browns really could have been in the driver's seat, going for this, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it definitely is. But I mean, all is not lost. They're still 3-1. They're still 2-2. They're still first place in the division. Yeah, these were we talked about it before the season started. This was a 4-game stretch that they needed to rack up as many wins as possible because, and everybody knows now, the schedule gets tougher. I think if they have the second toughest schedule down the rest of the way. I think ESPN said 5 out of the top 8 of their power index teams the Browns play. So this is a tough stretch. That's definitely going to make or break the season over the next 7 games, until Deshaun Watson comes back and is able to be on the field. But I mean, 2-2 is still not terrible. Like we said, the division is not in a good place right now, but the fact that the Browns are still in first place and on the tiebreaker because of the division record, all is not completely lost on the season so far.
Yeah, they're lucky that the division is shaking out how it has so far. Um, it's unfortunate they don't have full control, which they won a minute 50 seconds against the Jets, and they're sitting at 3-1, and they're in much better shape. But um, we had kind of talked about the record that they needed to have in these first 11 games, and boy, you wish you really had those two. But thankfully they're still at the top of the division now. They're definitely going to be in a fight for the rest of the season, because that schedule does get a lot tougher.
Without a doubt. Let's go ahead and get caught up on some news from this week, at least before we get ready for the Chargers game. Uh, Browns made some roster moves during the week. They got back Drew Forbes, who they claimed off waivers. He went to Detroit after the roster cut down, but now he's back, adding more offensive line depth. And Andrew Berry cut his first draft pick of the Andrew Berry era. They waived Richard LeCount on Monday and then turned around and he ended up back on the practice squad after he cleared waivers. Um, you know, Anthony, it was so funny. Everybody said Barry's never going to cut a draft pick. I mean, we were getting to a point where he was going to have to at some point. We had an idea that it could have been LeCount, could have been Felton. It seemed like two guys that were teetering on the roster, but it ultimately was LeCount. But now they get Drew Forbes back, who obviously was one of the last Dorsey picks on the roster before he got cut. And that just adds even more offensive line depth. So now they might be able to run like 9 offensive linemen out there on certain formations, the way they've done 7 or 8 in certain instances.
Yeah, it's kind of been interesting to see how they brought in, Michael Dunn and Furlholt a couple of times in those short yardage situations, and it's worked. So, you can never have enough depth with the offensive line, and the Browns is as deep as anybody else is in the NFL. So, thanks to Bill Callahan and the job he does with those guys, and um, you can never have enough guys, and if you're going to continue to use them creatively like they have, the more guys, the better.
Wait, Anthony, did you say that a play call worked by Kevin Stefanski? You look at Brown's Twitter some days and you think he's probably the worst offensive coordinator in Brown's history.
Oh, good lord.
Can we seriously stop that, folks? Like, I know sometimes he's made bad decisions. Sunday wasn't the best moments for Kevin Stefanski, but can we stop saying he needs to be fired? Can we stop saying he needs to be play calling? And it's not just Brown's Twitter. There's some in the media that is making ridiculous articles saying that his seat's getting warmer. Kevin Stefanski's not going anywhere. Like, he's made his mistakes, and if I need to bring it up again, he's 12-3 coming off a loss. So let's see what happens this Sunday. Even then, even if they get boat raced by the Chargers, he is not on the hot seat anytime soon unless the wheels completely fall off. That needs to be stopped.
Yeah, he basically has another free year, right? I would think, based on the quarterback situation. So, like you said, unless the wheels completely fall off and things go way south and they finish like 4-14 or 4-13 or something, um, that would really be the only situation. But um, I, I don't understand it. I thought Betonio had a great quote today. I don't know if you saw it or not, where he said, um, "If you win a game, you're going to the Super Bowl. If you lose a game, everybody like needs to get fired or something to that effect. Or you're the worst team in the NFL." I think that was the quote. So, um, you know, I know it's a results business, but um, and I know we get the emotional after the games and get fired up and everything, but um, you know, take a step back, look at the big picture. You're gonna be okay. So we can stop doing this thing with Kevin Stefanski.
Right. And that's coming from me, who's very critical of the Haslams and how they've handled things during their ownership, but I just don't see it happening anytime soon. And like we both said, if the wheels fall off, then that's a discussion for another time. Getting back to the roster moves, they placed Jerome Ford on injured reserve. Still unsure why, but I do know he did slip on the turf on Sunday during one of the kickoff returns, and then he was out the rest of the game. So maybe he tweaked an ankle or a knee or something, and he's going to be out at least 4 weeks. But that's still, like, no one really knows what happened there. So I'm surprised the media didn't get any clarity. But then again, when the media does something intelligent, it'll be their first time.
I found it, by the way.
Oh, okay. What was it?
An ankle injury, according to Mary Kay, and he left the stadium in a walking boot.
Okay. Well, shout out to Mary Kay. I did miss that on Sunday, so kudos to her for getting that one.
But
Um,
because you're blocked, right?
no, I'm not blocked.
No. Okay.
No, no, I'm one of the few that's not blocked by Mary Kay, and I do appreciate her work, despite some of the criticism she's gotten over the years. So, kudos to her for getting that one. But the Browns also brought back an old face. Pharaoh Brown, tight end, was formerly with the Browns back in 2018 and 19, then went to Houston for a little bit. So he does have some kind of connection with Deshaun Watson, I believe. Put up some decent numbers there. I think is the other tight end to opposite Derek Fells. So he comes back. The Browns now have 4 tight ends on the roster. So it's starting to feel a little normal with a Kevin Stefanski style offense to have 4 tight ends. Between Njoku, Bryant, Forrestal, who they signed to the active roster last week, and now Pharaoh Brown back in the fold. So, um, you know, we could see, instead of 7 offensive linemen, we could be seeing the 3 tight end sets. We saw it a little bit last week in the Atlanta game. So, Pharaoh Brown back in the fold was kind of a surprise to see that. But yeah, tight end depth is not a bad thing. And I'm sure Stefanski likes what he saw out of Pharaoh Brown and wanted the Browns to bring him in.
Yeah, he was solid for that. He was here for what, 1 year, I think, if I remember right.
I think he was
Uh,
practice squad in 2018, and then he was on the active roster throughout the 19 season.
yeah, he did a good job when he was here for a little bit. So, um, yeah, I know it's
And
a
he's a
separate
local
coach.
kid, so
Yeah, there's that. I know it's a separate coaching staff though, right? So,
yeah, that was the
uh,
Kitchens year. So
yeah. Oh, good lord, I don't want to remember that.
yeah, that was a bad year.
That was a very bad year. Um, but bringing him back, at least he's familiar with the city and everything. But I know everything else around him is different. But hopefully he can come in here, do a decent job. Like you mentioned, they do have 4 tight ends now. Um, you know, we know what Njoku could do. Harrison Bryant's been a little quiet, I think, recently, but I know they like to use him more for blocking and everything. So we'll see what the purpose they have for Farrell Brown, and see what he's able to do.
Yeah, was with Houston at the beginning of the year, 7 catches on 9 targets for 72 yards. Um, not grading out well as a pass blocker. So it'll be interesting to see what the Browns have in mind for him as a fourth tight end, potentially, maybe the third, and they slide Forrestall back to the practice squad. But yeah, big body, 6'6", 258, still only 28 years old. Uh, did some limited stuff the last couple years in Houston. 2020 with Deshaun Watson had 14 catches, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So there is some kind of chemistry there with Watson. So obviously Watson gets back in the facility next week. Can't do any on-field stuff for at least another month, but yeah, maybe off the field, getting reacclimated with Pharaoh Brown and some of the other guys at the bottom of the roster, and get reacclimated with the offense and everything. So, things are pointing up for the Browns. So we'll see how that goes. Something else that's pointing up, Anthony, yesterday on Wednesday, Myles Garrett back on the field. We didn't get to talk about the car accident and everything, but and I know Adam Schefter reported Sunday morning that he has an AC sprain in his shoulder, could be out 2 to 4 weeks, but Myles practiced Wednesday, he practiced Thursday. Based on Joe Woods' comments, looks like Myles is going to be back on the field Sunday, which is definitely a shot in the arm to the defense that, the defensive line struggled big time against Atlanta. We don't know if Clowney will be out there. Probably not based on his comments, but getting 95 back out there is certainly going to be a boost to the defense that severely needs it after what happened Sunday.
Yeah, and there's many reasons why you love to have Myles Garrett out on the field, and I know we'll talk about the Chargers here in a second, but when you have a quarterback coming up who is able to move the pocket and throw on the run, you got to do your best to contain him, even though he's a very good passer from the pocket as well. But you can't let him get on the outside there. So um, it's definitely great to have Miles back, and hopefully, he'll be able to um, play. I'm not sure if they're going to expect him to play like the entire game. I would imagine maybe around like 60% of the snaps, if as long as he's feeling good. But hopefully he's able to get back out there and have an impact, because the defense certainly needs it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Defense did not perform well against Atlanta. I don't think they'll get Clowney back, but they can get Myles back. It's definitely going to be a boost to that defensive front for sure. Let's get on to the Chargers. This team, Anthony, they came into the year. I think they was a sneaky pick for the Super Bowl. Obviously, they had a good year last year, lost in the playoffs, but Justin Herbert ascending as a quarterback. So much talent on that team on both sides of the ball, but they're sitting 2-2. And I think the biggest thing when you look at the Chargers, Anthony, the injuries have just stacked up week after week after week. They lose Rashawn Slater, who was their number one draft choice last year, to a bicep rupture. He's going to be out the majority of the season. They're saying he could come back, but it's most likely he misses the entire season. Joey Bosa goes out with a groin injury. He's out the next 8 to 10 weeks. Keenan Allen, their number one receiver, has been out since week 1 with a hamstring injury. Justin Herbert's banged up. He's been dealing with a rib injury. They're missing other pieces, but the Chargers were, I think, a lock for a lot of people to the postseason. But just the fact that the injuries have piled up, they're still sitting 2-2, so all is not lost yet because of the Broncos' struggles. The Chiefs are still hanging around. They're still 2-2, so they're still a potential playoff team, but the injuries have really taken a toll on that team so far.
Yeah, they were my pick to win the Super Bowl
That's
back
right.
when you do the predictions, and that's why when you look at all this, everything looks good on paper, but you have to play the games, and unfortunately there's injuries, and they've definitely been hit by the injury bug, to say the least. So that division is kind of shaping up like the AFC North too, where everybody's kind of hovering around 500 at the moment. If they're able to get healthier, I can certainly see them, taking control in that division. Um, there's so many good teams on paper in that division. I'm curious to see, how that one shakes out at the end. But they're still a very good football team, have a lot of talent. While Herbert has been banged up, uh, he's done a very great job. And from the game last year between which was the game Baker got hurt in, right? Um, or is that the game after? I can't
I
remember.
think it was the game after. This was the game that was like the Browns should have won, but they had the controversial pass interference call on Mike Williams. This was like the first time last year where like people were like pointing the finger at Mike Woods or Joe Woods and wanted him fired because they gave up
Yeah,
49 and it was just a bad,
yeah,
bad defensive day.
yeah. It was. But the offense still showed up that day. And did what they could. But you saw what he was able to do in that game last year, and while he was fully healthy, and while he hasn't been healthy these last couple of weeks, he still played very well. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for a defense that has been less than stellar to say the least, and has been dealt some significant injuries. So um, you hope that you can go in there. I know not having Keenan Allen out there, helps the Browns out, but Mike Williams is still good. Um, he's a big guy you got to cover, and we'll see who's up to that challenge. So there's a lot you have to focus on. Austin Eckler is still very good um, in the running game, and we saw what the Falcons did to the Browns on the ground last week um, with a banged up defensive line. Now, hopefully, Miles being back helps that, but um, they're still missing a good chunk of that D line even with Miles back. So you hope that those guys can step up and be able to somewhat control the line of scrimmage against the Chargers, who you talked about the O line or the O line. Um, not being stellar for the Chargers. So, there's certainly opportunities there. They just have to take advantage of those against an extremely good Chargers offense.
Yeah, let's talk about the offensive line real quick. Herbert's been good despite the offensive line struggles. Obviously, he's completing 67% of his passes, 9 touchdown to 2 interception so far this year. But the offensive line, big issue. Obviously, they lost Slater already. On 173 dropbacks, Herbert's been pressured 51 times. So that's just under 30%. That's still a pretty big number. The guy that came in and I think played right tackle last week, he was either right tackle or left tackle, did a pretty good job holding up Houston's defensive line, didn't allow any pressures. But obviously Houston doesn't have the playmakers on their defensive line that the Browns have. So they've added Corey Linsley this offseason, so that upgraded the interior part of the offensive line. But Herbert does not do well under pressure. Bringing it up on Pro Football Focus, 32 or 37.2% of his dropbacks have been under pressure. He's only completing 51.7% of his passes, and he hasn't thrown a touchdown, and he's thrown 1 interception. So obviously, the Browns need to find a way, and this is even when he's blitzed, he's completing 62% of his passes, 1 touchdown though, and 2 interceptions. So this is where Joe Woods needs to get creative. Whether Miles is in out there all the snaps or just in a limited role, the Browns need to find a way to dial up some pressure because Justin Herbert has not been well under pressure this year. When he's kept clean in the pocket, he's putting up elite numbers. So the Browns need to find a way to get back in that backfield, disrupt his performance, even though he's mobile and can move out of the pocket and move the pocket with his legs. The Browns need to find a way to get pressure constantly on him on Sunday, in order to find a way to slow the Chargers offense down. You talked about it. Mike Williams is still out there. Austin Eckler's out there. Gerald Everett is out there. These guys still have playmakers on that side of the ball, even though Keenan Allen's out. So if the Browns are going to find some way to win, And even though they're 2.5 point underdogs, this defense needs to ratchet up the pressure and get after Herbert early and often on Sunday.
Yeah, I think with Mike Williams, Mike Williams out there with Keenan Allen out, hope maybe you could just focus um, you know, one guy on Mike Williams, and that'll allow you to send some extra pressure because they just put Denzel on him for most of the game and go from there. Allows some of those other defensive backs open to be able to blitz and put some pressure on this quarterback. They have a 6th round pick as their starting left tackle at the moment, and then their 1st round pick is at right guard. So you got 2 rookies. Maybe try to do your best to confuse them, um, to be able to get some pressure in there. I think we saw a little bit during the Atlanta game when they were able to get some pressure on Mariota. Bad things happen. Unfortunately, they just ended up gashing us with the run, which when you're playing the Chargers, you kind of have to, and Austin Eckler, you have to obviously be mindful of that too. And he's definitely a back out of the backfield that can catch the football as well. So you don't want to blitz yourself out of out of the game, but you definitely need to, like you mentioned, bring some pressure and do your best to, confuse these young offensive linemen and, attack Herbert as much as you can, especially if he's, still hurting and not 100%.
For sure. But when you look at the secondary, like you mentioned, like you keep like Denzel Ward, for instance, on Mike Williams, and then maybe able to send a safety or two on the blitz, like Josh Palmer and Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter have filled in nicely. They have combined 25 catches for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in the wake of Keenan Allen not being out there. So you don't want to leave one of those guys open because you get burned, like last week when they left Drake London wide open, or no, not Drake London, but Zacchaeus wide open, set them up for the game-winning field goal. So you don't want to leave any guys unattended for, but obviously focus on their top skill guys. Make sure Eckler can't make plays out of the backfield as a receiver, because he's been better as a receiver than he's been as a runner this year. And then, of course, like Gerald Everett has been a solid acquisition for them, him coming from Seattle at tight end. And then obviously you got to focus on Mike Williams. They paid him all that money to stay in Los Angeles. So if you can limit the big time producers on offense, I think that's going to give the Browns a chance, as well as, like you said, terrorizing those rookies the way Miles did week 1 in Carolina against Ike Ekwonu. If he can cause some havoc against those couple rookies on the offensive front, it could be a long day for Herbert if things go according to plan.
Yeah, I know it's tough to do it, and it sounds good on paper, right? But we'll see how Miles's health is able to um, allow him to put that kind of pressure on Herbert and those young offensive linemen. So hopefully, I would feel a lot better if Clowney was playing, but I think without Clowney there and the interior being as poor as it's been, I don't know if they're going to be able to drum up as much pressure as they want to, or at least I think we would like them to, as we've been talking about this year. But hopefully they're able to get enough to interrupt Herbert as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. When you look at the Chargers defensive side of the ball, obviously they lost Joey Bosa. They still had Derwin James, still have Jerry Tillery, have guys up all over that defense that they've built up over the years. They go out in free agency this offseason. Well, they traded for Khalil Mack from the Chicago Bears. So that bolstered even what was already a dominant pass rushing up front with Bosa, and he's been phenomenal for them already with 5 sacks in the first 4 games. They also went out and got J.C. Jackson from New England, who is, obviously one of the top corners on the market. Khalil Mack's been great for them. J.C. Jackson has not. He is grading out very poorly. He's their second worst graded defender, according to Pro Football Focus. Just has not been the guy that they thought he was going to be. And this defense as a whole, Anthony, they were dominant week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders. But ever since they gave up, they're giving up 27 a game. but they gave up 27 to the Chiefs, 38 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they gave up 24 last week to the Texans when they had a huge lead, and the Texans came back in the second half, but the Chargers held them off for the win. But this defense has not been good. Brandon Staley obviously was hired because of his defensive prowess and his aggressiveness as a head coach, much like Kevin Stefanski. This defense has not shown up. Obviously, they've had injuries, but the Browns offense, as good as it's been and criticized as it's been, they can keep it up this week against a poor yet talented Chargers defense.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities, when you look at it on paper against the Chargers that the Browns offense, should be able to score. The biggest thing, what they need to do is obviously convert those red zone situations. You saw, a couple times last week against Atlanta where they failed to convert, whether it was going for it on fourth down, and that not working. Um, obviously you want to punch it in the end zone there. And, when you play the Chargers and the offense you have to, you know, convert those types of opportunities that you're given. So the Browns need to do a better job of that this week if they want to win this game. With all you talked about the Chargers defense, there's certainly opportunities to score. Whether it's running or passing. Um, hopefully Amari Cooper can have a better game. And Brissett talked about that. Only having one catch for 8 yards against Atlanta is certainly not ideal. And Brissett talked about it's critical to get him more than one ball caught for him. So um, hopefully this week they're able to come out. Uh, Convert those opportunities in the red zone that they're given. Score obviously as much as they can to be able to put yourself in a position to win this game. So um, hopefully come Sunday this offense can convert a lot more and kind of just look better. I think they looked okay last week, but there's certainly areas to improve upon, and I think the receivers have looked kind of better than we thought in certain situations. But I know running the game is their bread and butter at the moment, and a healthy dose of Chubb and Hunt, I think will do some damage against this defense, especially when you have a pass rusher like Khalil Mack out there. You can turn that pressure against them by throwing out of the backfield and throwing screens and things of that nature. So I know they struggled with that a couple of times last week with Atlanta. So hopefully that's cleaned up and they're able to move the ball up and down the field. They just need to improve on those things, and hopefully come Sunday you'll see that.
Yeah, for sure. Jedrick Wills is in for a big test because I would imagine Khalil Mack's going to line up against him. Wills has had a good start to the season, so this is going to be a big test for him against one of the elite pass rushers. You mentioned, this is a game where they should continue to run the ball successfully. The Chargers are giving up the second to worst yards per attempt in the National Football League and running the ball. They're giving up 5.4 yards per carry. So this seems like a game where Chubb and Hunt can really run the ball well. It's going to be sunny, not much wind on Sunday in Cleveland. So, they're going to throw the football. There's no doubt about it. But, the misconception that the Browns aren't running enough when they have run the second most carries in the league. And even if you take away all the Brissett runs, Hunt and Chubb combined would be 7th in the league in rushing attempts. So among team stats. So that's just crazy to me that people think they're not running enough. Chubb's 2nd in the league or 3rd in the league in carries alone behind only Barkley and Mixon. So, but yeah, I think running the ball is going to be key. This secondary is still good despite JC Jackson's struggles. Derwin James still playing really well. Bryce Callahan, who they picked up from Denver, I think was it last year or this year? I can't remember which one in free agency. And, they drafted Asante Samuel Jr. this year, and he's been off to a decent start as a rookie. He's given up 2 touchdowns, but he's forced 4 pass breakups, and he's also had an interception. So, this secondary still is loaded with talent. despite Jackson's struggles. So, while the Browns will want to throw, it could be a game where they're going to run a lot, I think, just because, the secondary is still talented. Even some guys in the linebacking core are good at coverage as well. So, this is going to be a game where I think they should run more than they throw, but also at the same time, exploit some of those weaknesses on that Chargers secondary. If you get Cooper and JC Jackson in a one-on-one situation, I feel good about my chances with them throwing to Amari Cooper in that scenario.
Yeah, and I think this is just a game to run overall, and because you want to not have the ball in Justin Herbert's hands. So if you're able to control the clock and control the time of possession by running the football and being successful at it, I think that'd be a huge win for the Browns and trying to win this game on Sunday.
For sure. Looking at the injury reports real quick before we make our predictions. On the Browns end, Clowney's not practicing. Everybody else has been limited this week. Taven Bryan with the hamstring. The fact that he's limited means he might go on Sunday. He obviously missed the Atlanta game, which he was sorely missed in the middle of that defensive line. Cooper and Conklin were rest days. Myles Garrett obviously limited as he comes back, but all signs are pointing that he's going to play. JOK and Ward from their injuries in the Steeler game, they're still limited, but they were full go against Atlanta, so no reason why they shouldn't be full go against the Chargers. On the Chargers end, obviously Keenan Allen did not practice again, so I would imagine he's not going to play again this week. Everybody else was limited or fully participants. The one interesting twist, the Chargers kicker, Dustin Hopkins, is limited with a right quad injury. They signed someone to their practice squad, so they might have to throw out I think it's a rookie kicker. First time in Cleveland. There's going to be like 10-mile-an-hour winds, but we know how the wind swirls at First Energy Stadium. Could be a unique first game experience for a rookie kicker to have to kick in that stadium on Sunday. So that's an interesting twist that could be exploited and be an advantage to the Browns come Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, wish the winds were more like 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, on Sunday, but just kicking in that stadium's hard overall. So maybe there'll be one advantage there.
Yeah. Well, no, Anthony, those 30-mile-an-hour winds will be on Friday during, the Guardians playoff game against Tampa. So, we get to experience the winds for that, unfortunately, and not during the Browns game.
At freaking noon. Like, come on. Really? Noon?
You got the two of the smallest markets in baseball, and MLB pretty much said "fu" to Cleveland and Tampa. So, yeah, that just tells you all you need to know about how Major League Baseball feels about the small markets.
It really says a lot that I saw the game one isn't even sold out yet because of that.
They said limited. Game 2 is sold out, but I mean the weather is going to be crappy Friday, so I can't really fault people for not wanting to go and sit in that.
You're pretty much the audiences for both teams being on the East Coast are in work or at school. So like, come on.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, way to go, Manfred. You really outdid yourself again. As we wrap things up, Anthony, how do you think Sunday is going to go? Browns versus Chargers.
I think Cleveland's going to win this weekend, but not on the football field. I think the Guardians will win their series, but I don't think they're good. The Browns are going to beat the Chargers. There's just, I think, still too much, with that Chargers offense that is going to give the Browns defense, more trouble and just kind of, bring to light some of the troubles that defense has had. Obviously, not being fully healthy hurts, and not having Clowney and everybody. So you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of Myles Garrett either. So I'm going to pick the Chargers by at least a touchdown. So I'll say Chargers 33, Browns 24.
You were fairly close to what my prediction was going to be. I'm also going to pick the Chargers, as painful as it is, because my birthday is Saturday. I'm going to the game Sunday as part of a birthday gift for my girlfriend. as much as I want to see the Browns win, I don't think they're going to. I just think the Chargers are the better team. As much as I want to believe Joe Woods saying we totally skipped over this, Anthony, saying that the communication's going to get better. I just I just find that it's not going to get better in a week. I hope so. But I think that Justin Herbert is one of the special quarterbacks in this league. And I just think that he's going to pick apart this defense, unfortunately. Even with Myles Garrett being back out there, I expect the Browns to be in the game, but at the end of the day, I just think the Chargers are the better team. So I go with the Chargers on this one. I'm gonna say Chargers 34, Browns 24. So yeah, unfortunately, my birthday is going to be ruined in some aspect for that, but looking forward to be at the stadium on Sunday.
I think it was Caitlin that said in our group chat that, hey, if you undersell and under expect things for this Sunday, and they end up winning, it'll be that much better. So hopefully they'll end up doing that for you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Just to see the Browns find a way to win, see the Guardians go to the next round, and get some hopeful revenge on the Yankees in the ALDS. That would be pretty sweet. So
I know I just seen a clip on Twitter of a home run from like 5 years ago in game two from the huge comeback. So hopefully they can get some revenge after, obviously not winning that series after being up 2-0. So, but they obviously had to get through Tampa Bay first, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a fun sports weekend in Cleveland. Obviously the Cavs preseason started Wednesday night. They looked pretty good, even though they lost to Philly. Looks like they can hang with the Eastern contenders. So that's going to be a fun season. Obviously, Guardian playoff baseball is always a thrill in October, and we'll see what happens with the Browns on Sunday.
Hey, you could send this next little clip to Alex. As I'm watching baseball this weekend, I will definitely enjoy it.
I will sure to be passing along the word to him. As we wrap things up, we'll be back. We'll probably be back Sunday night to recap what happened Browns versus Chargers. In the meantime, you can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08, and check out the Dogland on Facebook as well as Twitter at the Dogland. If you're new to the podcast, subscribe to us, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the podcast. And until next time, as we get on out of here, Browns fans, as always, go Browns.